A lonely house. A nephew's unexpected visit. What starts as casual chatter ignites attention too electric to ignore. But when another family member walks in, will their secret stay hidden? Like and subscribe to witness the fallout. That afternoon, the house was incredibly quiet. The sort of silence that draws your attention to the faint hum of electronics or the distant chirping of birds beyond the window. I sat alone in the living room, absent-mindedly flipping through a magazine I had no interest in. My husband, ever consumed by his job, was away on yet another work trip. I wasn't upset. It had become routine. But the emptiness in the room felt more intense than usual. I glanced at my phone, hoping for a message or a call, but there was nothing. The quiet made me realize how repetitive my life had become, how habit had wrapped itself around me like an invisible wall. I loved my husband, or at least that's what I told myself. But over time, passion had settled into ease, and ease had quietly turned into stagnation. A car door closing pulled me from my thoughts. I looked out the window and saw my nephew Ethan walking toward the house. He was the son of my husband's younger brother, though the small difference in our ages made him feel more like a distant cousin. In his early 20s, Ethan carried himself with assurance and had a natural charm that drew people in. I opened the door before he could knock. "Hey, Ethan, what brings you by?" I asked, hiding my surprise behind a smile. He grinned. "Uncle asked me to pick up some papers he left. Hope I'm not bothering you." "Not at all, come on in," I said, stepping aside. As he entered, I noticed the confident way he moved and the bright energy he brought into the room. He dropped his bag on the couch and looked around. "Looks great in here, as always. You've got style." I laughed and waved off the compliment. "Nice try. That won't get you off the hook. What documents are you looking for?" He shrugged. "Something about real estate stuff. I'll check his office." As Ethan headed toward the study, I couldn't help but compare him to my husband. Ethan was lively, captivating, and completely sure of himself. Qualities that had been absent from my life for far too long. I shook the thought away, feeling foolish. He was family, after all. When he returned, he held the papers and had his sleeves rolled up, revealing a tattoo I hadn't noticed before. He caught me looking and gave a sly smile. "You like it?" "It's interesting," I replied, feeling a bit awkward. We sat down and talked more than we ever had before. His stories were full of excitement and humor, a vivid contrast to the dull routine I'd grown accustomed to. His laughter was infectious, and just being around him lifted something in me. For a little while, everything else faded. My husband, responsibilities, social expectations. It was just me and Ethan sharing a moment I couldn't quite explain. Our conversation flowed easily, and the space around us felt warm in a way I hadn't felt in years. Ethan leaned back, his gaze meeting mine for a second too long. There was something about how attentively he listened, like he genuinely cared about every word I said, and it caught me off guard. It was almost overwhelming. At one point, he reached for the glass of water on the table, and our hands brushed. It was a quick touch, but it lingered in my thoughts. I pulled away instinctively, laughing it off, though I could feel my face growing hot. "You okay?" Ethan asked, his voice casual but his eyes intent on mine. "Of course," I answered quickly, standing up to create some space. "It's just a bit warm in here." I walked to the kitchen, pretending to keep busy, though I wasn't really doing anything. Even across the room, I could sense him, something unspoken settling in the air. When I turned around, he was leaning in the doorway, his posture relaxed but confident. "You seem different today," he said, his tone lower. "Different how?" I asked, trying not to show any emotion. "I don't know. Maybe more alive." His words took me by surprise, and for a moment I couldn't think of how to respond. There was something honest in his voice that made it hard to brush off. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly noticed. And that scared me. "Ethan, you should probably go soon," I said finally, avoiding his eyes. "Why?" he asked, stepping closer. "Am I bothering you?" "No, that's not it," I said quickly, but I didn't have a real explanation. Or maybe I did, but couldn't bring myself to say it. The air between us was thick with things we weren't saying, feelings we hadn't admitted. He was close now, too close, and I could feel myself wavering. This isn't right, I whispered, more to myself than to him. I know, he said softly, his voice calm. But doesn't it feel like it is? I looked up at him, my heart pounding. The world outside seemed to fall away. It was just us, suspended in a moment that felt both forbidden and inevitable. He reached out and touched my hand again, and I didn't pull back. The space between us disappeared like it had never existed. My thoughts screamed for me to stop, to step away, to think about what this meant. But I couldn't move. Just then, the sound of the front door opening shattered the silence. My heart jumped as Ethan and I sprang apart, both turning toward the entrance. My nephew Jake stood there, his face showing a mixture of surprise and suspicion. "Hey, Jake," Ethan said slowly, his eyes shifting between us. "Am I interrupting something?" "No, not at all," I replied quickly, forcing a laugh that felt fake even to me. Ethan was just leaving. "Yeah," Ethan said, casually addressing Jake. "I came to grab some papers for Uncle." Jake lifted an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "That's funny. Uncle told me to come get those same papers." My stomach turned as I realized Ethan's story was unraveling. Jake's sudden appearance reminded me of just how close I had come to crossing a line I shouldn't. "I think there's been a mix-up," I said quickly, trying to regain control. Ethan already picked up what he needed. "You don't have to stay." Jake didn't move, his expression sharpening. "Strange, he didn't mention you'd be here." Ethan shrugged, unfazed. "Didn't think it mattered. We were just catching up, nothing serious." The words sounded innocent, but they carried a weight neither of us acknowledged. Jake seemed to pick up on it, his eyes lingering on me a moment longer than was comfortable. "Well, I'll leave you to it," he said at last. His tone clipped as he turned to go, leaving the door slightly open behind him. The silence that followed was suffocating. Ethan looked at me, his face unreadable.